For a while now, Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer have sit comfortably as the top performing shonen of this new generation. Although One Piece still stays strong, it doesn't have the chokehold it had on shonen as it did many years ago. Every time a movie or a new episode comes out for these two, the world goes crazy. And you know, I need to say, they're a bit overrated. Let me start with Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer follows a pretty straightforward story that can have really entertaining highs but some excruciatingly boring lows. My prime example is this last season that failed to create any buzz for the series, which is so unlike the rest of the show. And when it's not that, it just fails to capture anything about the character that may seem interesting. As for Jujutsu Kaisen, well, look, it's a map as poster child. It doesn't have to be my favorite to see that it's one of the projects with the highest production and thought put into it. Season 1 of Jujutsu Kaisen is a perfectly solid shonen. I thoroughly enjoy the first half since it's really unique to basically remove the main character from the other characters at the start of the story. But I also find the story with Junpei and Mahito the most engaging in the whole season. From thematics to antagonists and side characters, this was definitely the period of Jujutsu Kaisen I enjoyed the most. Itadori really is a fun main character, mainly because of the little things. He's very straightforward as far as shonen main characters go, but small details such as what type of girl he's into, him being somewhat of a geek, and his relationship with other characters is what makes him stand out from many other characters that fail to leave an impression. You also see some subtle growth with him throughout the first season, from his initial mission of trying to save everyone to having to deal with the death of others. I expect this character trait to be explored even more, as well as his dynamic with Sukuna. Something that Jujutsu Kaisen does that not a lot of shonen do is that I actually like all of these guys. In a lot of other shows, I struggle to find characters that aren't absolutely insufferable, and most of the times they are the same ones that take the most screen time. But in this show, I actually enjoy any perspective it decides to take. It's actually hard to pick favorites. The way they are introduced is pretty boring since it was just a class test, but I did really enjoy the majority of the narratives being told, especially the relationship between Toro and Itadori. Jujutsu Kaisen 0, though stellar in animation, was a very straightforward story with an even more generic main character. I found it hard to be interested in the story whenever it was focused on Ghetto, the racist.
Filthy monkey. Want everyone to breathe in the monkey smell. Nothing but monkeys.
No matter what anyone tells you, I hate those monkeys.
He was pretty funny. At the state the anime is at right now, Jujutsu Kaisen is like walking into a hot topic. Here, even the music kinda sounds alike. You go in, you see some really cool shirts, nice employees, and just a really cool style. But you leave with nothing. Every single time. There's nothing wrong with the store aside from perhaps being too packed, but there's not a single item that you're dying to get. And that's my fear with this upcoming season and the rest of the show. I fear that the story will go through the basic straightforward shonen formula like Demon Slayer that won't do anything outside of the box. Oh my god, there's so many attractive men on the screen. Season 2 is a completely different change from Season 1, taking a step back to Gojo's days in Jujutsu High with one of the titular antagonists of the story, Geto. It's completely different from anything we've seen so far in the story. Different main character, different side characters, different antagonists, and I love it. This first episode feels tailor-made for me, and it's just the beginning of this amazing season. The episode starts with a subtle introduction to Geto and his crippling ideology. I think it's very interesting the way this character has been presented to us through the story. In the first season, all he really was the master behind the strings, but he didn't do a lot. In Zero, which is a prequel, we see his resolve resolution and discrimination towards normal people. And now, we get to see a character that, although seemingly friendly, is struggling with his ideals, trying to balance his logic with emotions. It's a very weird order, but I can't say I particularly dislike it, since every new perspective is more interesting than the last one. Already in the first couple scenes, the complete atmosphere and camera work is completely different from the first season, taking an approach much more similar to Chainsaw Man when it comes to its camera work. It's a lot more stylized. Felt something more like Fujimoto, the creator of Chainsaw Man, than Gege, but as a huge fan of Chainsaw Man and an even bigger film fanboy, I loved it. We cut to two minor characters from the first season entering a haunted mansion. The sequence researching the haunted mansion was incredible, and it made me realize that for a series about cursed spirits, prior to this, it didn't have any horror elements aside from body horror. So I'm glad that MAPPA included this lighthearted uneasiness that the original manga didn't have. The way they do the reveal of it being an endless hallway was great, since it worked in a looping fashion without ever looking lazy. The whole sequence worked exceptionally well because the solution wasn't a fight scene. The camera work here is so much better than the usual anime. It's way more stylized, especially when the camera moves around with our characters. The seasoning, the sauce, is all thanks to the series director Goshizono Shota. He's the director for one of the most expressive and dynamic episodes of the first season of Jujutsu Kaisen, and one of the best episodes of the previous year, episode 8 of Chainsaw Man. His realism, rotoscoping, and stills all were work really well in setting a mood for any scene he puts his pencil in. Instead of using extensive narration, looking at you, Demon Slayer, we see things through a more subtle and effective way. By the way we see Himeno carry Denji, we see just how unstable she is due to all her drinking. This scene of her unbuttoning her shirt is so satisfying. It's not overtly sexual in any way, and it's more so to really sit with the vibe of this sequence and how dosed off Himeno is. Shota is an incredibly ambitious director, and you can see that in every corner of this episode's amazing first half. The second half is also good, but the problem is that unlike Jujutsu Kaisen, Chainsaw Man's way of doing action is much more grounded, which does create a good chunk of really satisfying shots, but it lacks the over-the-top feeling other anime have that even I, as someone that loves the Chainsaw Man anime, agree it desperately lacks, especially in its action and comedy. Now that Shota takes the lead as series director, he can merge the over-the-top feeling with really smooth realism that he's recognized for. It makes every scene so much more alive than usual that so many anime are famous for. Back to the story. We meet young Gojo in Ghetto, and immediately you see the silliness I was talking about in full display. It doesn't force itself to be realistic, but it doesn't go for the typical anime humor. Instead, it uses its comedy more as background, which makes it easier to ignore and much more entertaining to catch. We learn so much about Ghetto and Gojo's relationship in one episode, especially about their friendship. We see the way their ideologies aren't dead set and they're both struggling to figure out what's right and wrong. They're young. It's hard to truly grasp everything and figure out where your ideals should be, but my favorite part of this conversation is that it takes place while they're doing something casual like playing basketball, making the dialogue so much more realistic. In anime, we rarely see any action being done while a conversation is going on. Dialogue doesn't take as much importance in anime, and it's really a shame when it's the only other way a story is told aside from visuals. One of my favorite movies of all time is Marriage Story. You know, the movie with the one clip?
Every day I wake up and I hope you're dead!
Yeah, I've watched it 12 times. What makes dialogue so natural in this movie is that it's not a person A talking to person B. They interrupt each other as they speak. They interact and talk about the environment around them. It all makes dialogue and its meaning flow so well. This is why something like Gojo and Ghetto talking on the phone while doing their mission is able to really capture this friendship and how close they are for the viewer. This is a phenomenal first episode that ends with the introduction of the biggest threat we've seen in the story, Toji. Let me tell you, everything in this arc breaks through Toji, but I'll talk about that later. The next episode starts with Ghetto getting his tea ready as he tortures a member of Group Q. By adding something as subtle as Ghetto drinking tea while this is going on, it's a really nice subtext showing us just how easy it is to deal with things like this for him. Ghetto and Gojo are the strongest in Jujutsu High, which has been shown in many different ways, especially for Gojo in the first season in the movie. Being unstoppable is honestly his thing. See what I did there? Unstoppable. And in this episode, we see more of that, how Gojo lives his life as this incredibly powerful being. He chill as Gojo walks into a room and all the girls are going crazy. He's so tall, he's so handsome, he's so nice. Even the teacher drops in her phone number. This guy goes out for the target, Rico, which I'll talk more about in a second, and they are no match for Gojo. The guy's ability is honestly amazing. He can create clones and alter which clone has his main body in a split second. And this is a crazy good ability for a one-off villain, but Gojo and Ghetto are simply that skilled. Ghetto handles it with ease and they can't even touch Gojo because of his ability. And the visual cue and how they explain Gojo's powers is so damn good. Instead of going the usual flash to gray flashback, it's all portrayed through Gojo's glasses. Another really creative flourish to not make you feel like you're just listening to the usual shonen power explanation. The way the disorganized music shapes itself as Gojo breaks the glass, it's all so perfect. The production of this anime is on point. It's like they grabbed the team of Chainsaw Man and made something 10 times more impactful and fun to watch. Every week is a new flavor. Every week feels so different yet so similar to its characters and production. This feels like the golden age of Jujutsu Kaisen in a way. Though a lot shorter, it's able to leave a mark on me, unlike anything the series has done so far. Have you ever been to Box Lunch? It's honestly the better version of Hot Topic. And in a way, Season 2 feels like what I feel like when I walk into Box Lunch. I feel at home. Like there's a fight between Ghetto and this random old man. Ghetto beats his ass so hard that the old man sees his childhood dog as life is flashing before his eyes. There are levels to this shit. I'm going to be talking about spoilers for a minute, so go ahead and watch the first 3 episodes of this season. Hopefully, I sold you on this portion of the story enough that you find it worth watching. But yeah, From here on out, there will be heavy spoilers, so get ready. There's also the character of Rico, which has some of my favorite quick characterization. In Jujutsu High, there's this old immortal guy that holds the balance of everything in the Jujutsu world. But being immortal doesn't mean he's young forever. Right now, he's a crippling grandpa and he needs some new flesh to live in. From Riko's birth, her purpose has been to be just that. She gets to live a seemingly normal life, go to school, make the occasional friend, but her end goal has always been to be a part of the old man. Wait, pause. For how depressing Riko's story is, she's really cheerful and energetic, matching Gojo's ecstatic energy towards everything. Perhaps this is because of how limited her time in this world is, and now is that she gets time to really appreciate that. There's some beautiful imagery shown in episode 3 that really captures Riko's character through no words exchanged. There's a compilation of her just enjoying life with the others, not having to worry about going too far or someone actively chasing for her life. She's free. But is she really? The music is thrilling, and as it tones down, we see Riko stare at a tank in the aquarium. She sees the fish swim so freely and with such great ease. But as we pan down, we see how they're trapped. They're trapped in a golden cage, without an exit, just like her. And by the end of the episode, Geto breaks it to her that Gojo and him agreed that if she didn't want to become the new vessel of the old man, they would simply let her go, let her live her life as she wishes. She thinks about her life, trapped in this tank. She talks about how lonely life is in this tank. She's always been special, in the sense that it has separated her from being around people. But through her mate, Gojo, and Geto, she gets a glimpse of how she could live a seemingly normal life. Her entire life she lived for this moment, but now that she's here, she wants to stay a little longer with everyone. Geto extends his hand, and as Riko wipes her tears and extends her,
Gojo Satoru wa ore ga koroshita.
okay, fine, we can talk about Toji. Toji's introduction as a villain is especially unique from many shonen I've watched. Stories are preoccupied on immediately showing just how menacing a villain is from the get-go, highlighting the evil, but not exactly the personal or the flaws these characters may have. With Toji, we actually start with everything that's wrong with him. Well, first of all, he's a jobless piece of shit.
Wait till I give my money right.
He loses his money on races that he bets on, which is even funnier when the conversation starts with a guy saying, "Yo, isn't your unemployed ass supposed to be hunting down Gojo?" Yeah, but it's better if I catch him by surprise, you know. Also, check out how I'm about to win some big cash. Easy. Damn. Wait, how's your kid? I couldn't care less. Just like Gojo and Geto, Toji is awfully laid back, and we get to see just how much of an asshole he is, without him ever coming out as cartoonishly evil. The only reason he's hunting down this girl in the first place is because he wants to bet more money on races. And he's also beefing with a 6-year-old? Gojo is naturally strong, and Toji's been wanting to beat the fuck out of Gojo since he was a little kid. We don't know too much about this whole ordeal, but this connection is very similar to the one Gojo ends up having with Toji's son, Megumi. So when this fight comes into place, it's quick to go down in history when this is the first time we see someone as strong as Gojo be challenged like this. Toji is prepared for this fight, catching him at his weak point after the previous episode mentioned how Gojo's been abusing his powers. Toji completely shifts the tone of the story. It's what makes the story go from a really good and fun arc to a tragic and emotional one. And for one character to hold this amount of weight in so little time, it's incredible. He challenges and breaks our main characters in so many ways that you know that after this, things will never be the same. The fight itself is filled with dynamic and fluid action that showcases Toji's speed and ability, while also showing Gojo be forced to use strategy against his foe. But even Gojo's power and strategy isn't enough against years of preparation by Toji. As Toji continuously stabs Gojo, there's this unsettling sound playing in your ears. It's like something isn't right. We see Gojo be challenged at first, but it's Gojo, man. We don't expect him to ever lose a fight, especially not like this. As the camera does a tilt showing Gojo's body, this unsettling sound goes up and it peaks as we see Toji's bugs fly around him, like he really is a corpse. Some really good use of camera work mixed with some amazing sound design, which brings us right back to this. It's really hard to criticize anything about this season. It's so obviously well thought out and you get such a proper feel about all these characters. Really, my only fear is how are they going to wrap everything that's going on here in 2 episodes, but I guess we'll have to see. The production has elevated from the first season, so much so that this season feels like its own thing, separate from the first one. There's so much more to enjoy, so many more tiny details to pick apart and appreciate. All these extra scenes help add a layer to all these characters. A lot of my favorite things from this season are completely new. They're not even in the manga, which is crazy, and it's these little things added to an already accelerating story that makes the feeling that were felt in the source material be even greater. Going through the reactions of episode 3 especially is so fun because Riko's death is so shocking to the audience, especially when everything this episode showed really did a great job at building a connection between the viewer and her. Wait, what the f*** is that?
Drink till I'm drunk, smoke till I'm high, castle on the hill.
I love Jujutsu Kaisen, and it's about time you start doing so too. I'm gonna have to talk about Bleach, right? Alright, let's do this one last time. I don't like Bleach. I didn't grow up with it, and for the longest time, Bleach didn't mean anything to me or my story. Until I watched the 1000-Year Blood War anime. I thoroughly enjoyed it and decided to make a video talking about my feelings towards the series. It got a lot of attention. Not all of it was positive. I did a poor job at explaining my problems with the series, which led to me having to constantly explain myself in the comments. Though a good bit of it were positive interactions, not all of them were very kind-hearted. It was my first time getting this level of attention, and from my horrible takes over the series, I regret nothing.
Just give me the thumbs up signal. What a dork.
Now I'll be honest, I wrote the OG Bleach part of my video in the span of 10 to 20 minutes, and used it as a way to rant about my series instead of proposing a proper critique of Bleach. My first take being that Ichigo is a really boring character, and yeah, I still stand by that. The story never does anything remotely interesting with his relationship towards other characters or his supposedly identity crisis. The mystery revolving him all lies in Ichigo never asking his dad the truth of his history and just the entire cast playing don't tell. What makes good mysteries engaging is that just like the reader, our characters have no real way of learning said mystery, and if they do, it's through immense hardship. What makes the mystery surrounding Eren in Attack on Titan captivating is that from the first season, we know that there is a secret in this basement. We know practically nothing regarding Eren's father, but both the mystery of the basement and Grisha are constantly built up and work in cohesion with one another as two incredibly strong mysteries. We see the cruelties our characters have to go through to simply find out what that mystery is. It's what makes it so exciting. And once we arrive in the basement and find out what was there, it becomes one of the greatest revelations in all of anime and manga, changing the entire perception of the reader and the characters of the world they inhabit. Going back to Ichigo, I said he never loses, which isn't true. But hear me out, his losses don't have weight. He wins when he has to and never goes through a real tragic loss. His most significant loss before his recent fight against Yu Habak was against Byakuya, which led to Ryukia's capture. Though this fight has a direct consequence and is a really good moment, it barely feels like a fight since Byakuya easily overpowers him. And you know, it's cool when Ichigo hits the gym and beats him, but it's what happens every single time. Ichigo's manhandled by the big bad, he gets stronger and beats the bad guy. There's no strategy in his fights, and a lot of power-ups don't even feel earned. Especially his Dangai training, which was arguably the biggest power-up he got, one-shotting Aizen, who was the strongest being in the series at the time. It felt so lazy and anticlimactic since Ichigo never really outsmarted Aizen, but instead he sacrifices his power for an insane power-up that leads him victorious. Similar to another moment in Bleach, right? Well, just like last time, the moment holds no weight in retrospect since Ichigo gets his powers back in the very next arc. I also mentioned Vastalord and how in that scene he didn't cause harm to anyone, which, yeah, that's not true. But it made me think, how could I forget something so significant, something so obvious? Cause the story does too! Vastalord is simply used as the way to get the fight over with, and then when Uryu gets hurt, the reason I forgot to mention it is that once it happens, it's completely overshadowed by Okura's death. After that, we cut to Ichigo saving Ruki and then going to the fight in Karakura. Him hurting Uryu is never brought up for what is left of the arc, and I struggle to remember if it's ever brought up again. Uryu or Orihime are nowhere to be seen until they're perfectly fine at the end of the arc. There is no impact to Ichigo harming Uryu because the story pays no real attention to it. I still stand by how repetitive Bleach fights tend to be, and how overall they're very uncreative in the way they are resolved, since most of them end with an ability that the viewer had never seen that is able to beat the enemy. Though there are some particular fights I quite enjoy that do involve some level of strategy. Also, for everyone saying, well, One Piece did it too, or Naruto did it worse. I know! Never in my original video did I claim either was perfect. In fact, I actually prefer Bleach over Naruto. And for One Piece, what I love the most about it, it's not its fights, because let's be honest, they're nothing crazy aside from a few. What I really love is the adventure, the crew, the mysteries, and everything that's not super shonen about it. And for Bleach, though I don't think it's bad in the slightest since it gets a lot of things right, such as thematics and aesthetics, it's just another pretty straightforward shonen. I said that Ichigo has very little characterization, which I meant. And no, I don't want Ichigo to have a grand goal or anything like that. Him not having them doesn't automatically make him relatable though. Ichigo lacks any real ambition, interest, or losses. The only person Ichigo loses is his mom before the story even starts. And how refreshing is it that our main character loses their mom? Haven't heard that one before. Ever. He wants to protect those dear to him, like every other shonen main character. His personality traits are very shallow aside from angsty. He's just a trademark shonen good boy, which there's nothing wrong with either. But the problem is he doesn't have any particular interests, hobbies, or ambitions that the story chooses to explore. I thought the Fullbringer arc was going to explore just that, since the story starts with Ichigo's friend asking him what Ichigo wants to do after school and what's his career path, and Ichigo's just lost in thought. Instead, it was about a new power system and a way to get Ichigo's powers back. I think two characters that are very similar are Tanjiro and Ichigo. Both kind-hearted people with the goal of protecting others, but with no desire of being the particularly best at something. Demon Slayer learns from many of the mistakes Bleach did, but it has a lot of faults of its own. If I had to sit down and think, I can't really choose which one I like more, but neither are bad. What makes you connect to a character is his dynamics with others, interests, hobbies, and just all the stuff that makes us boring humans. What makes a character like Poon Poon from Goodnight Poon Poon relatable? He's funny, silly, wants to be an astronaut as a kid. We all had that one crazy dream as a kid, right? We think about the girl we like in more ways than we're proud of. Sometimes we look at someone and think of doing something crazy we wouldn't actually do. Poon Poon is so layered that he feels like a real person. That's what makes him so relatable. A character like Denji is relatable not because he wants to protect his family, but because of the little things. When given the opportunity to get a taste of a luxurious life, he does all sort of weird things. A toast with every single topping, big bubble baths, and bizarre adventures of depravity. All these things make Denji feel human. Denji doesn't have a grand dream like Ichigo, but it's the little things that make him feel like a person. For the sake of bringing up the rest of the big three, Luffy's just really fun, and I like how he's grown from this naive kid that is ooga booga beat the bad guy to a more calm, thoughtful person that has experienced loss in so many ways. You know what's funny? It's interesting how Luffy's main struggle isn't even protecting his loved ones, yet the story challenges and pushes that struggle way more than Bleach ever does. Now for Naruto, there's a pretty good bit of character to him, but in all honesty, I'm not that crazy about him. Although Ichigo's pretty straightforward in terms of character, not blood, I still like him more because Ichigo never annoyed me out of my mind like Naruto did, but that's just a me thing. Speaking of Ichigo's character, I wanted to mention that although I'm not particularly fond of the Fullbringer arc, I also don't hate it like a lot of people. Though it's not as character focused as I was hoping, it was the one that did the most to build Ichigo's character, and Tsukishima as an antagonist felt like he had more of an effect on the protagonist than Aizen. You know, the supposedly best villain in all of shonen. He's not bad, but come on guys, he's not even the best in his own manga. Now 1,000-year blood war? Throw all those problems down the window. I've been waiting for this moment. As I mentioned before, I really enjoyed the direction the new season has given from both production and the story standpoint. Stakes are at their highest, there's phenomenal character deaths. Wait, what do you mean Byakuyu's not dead? But my problems are small compared to how much I enjoyed the first core. I heard how great the opening part of this arc was, so I was hesitant on how the story would grow to become. Will it go back to everything I disliked about the series and shonen overall? Or will it bring a completely new perspective to the show? Now that Bankays are gone and Quincy's really have the full advantage, it's also refreshing and makes you excited of what's to come next. Early screenings came out and people were saying that these first two episodes were movie level and blew the first part out of the park. Well, I still don't like Bleach.
So that was a fucking lie.
It's hard to talk about this part because it almost feels like a lot of what I enjoyed is gone from this continuation. The season starts and we get this really mythic portrayal of Yhwach's backstory and Reign of Terror. The way it's composed, it almost feels like something out of Lord of the Rings, and not gonna lie, already I was hooked by this episode's vibe. We see the Sternrooters and their dynamic personalities, but the rest of the episode was very, what's the word? Stiff. It was always my biggest fear with the series that episodes were going to lack any fluid movement, but aside from the occasional hiccup, part 1 really blew any expectations I had. But with this episode, the animation is so nothing. Aside from the occasional cool moment, this episode was severely underwhelming. It wasn't bad at all, but coming from the spectacular first episode of Bleach and the 5-star meal that was JJK, it left a lot to be expected. With sloppy but very creative camera movement, it ends on a really interesting cliffhanger. The Quincy's have changed their terrain to their hometown, bringing them to the edge of advantage. Adding to the fact that most Soul Reapers have lost their Bankais, I expect fights to be filled with a lot more strategy. No, they won't. They got their Bankais back in the very next episode. You see, what was so interesting to me about the 1000-Year Blood War arc from its very beginning was the ability to take away such a core part of our characters. This makes you excited for everything coming up, since the dynamic of fights in the series will take a complete drift, for better or for worse. Just like One Piece changed its fighting style from strictly devil fruits to hockey and its many different types, or Naruto going from exaggerated but grounded fights to a 10-hour beam compilation. Again, change can be for better or for worse, but instead of trying anything, Bleach remains to be as uninspired as ever when it comes to action. And its backgrounds, because Jesus Christ, why is there red everywhere? Seriously, I'm sick and tired of editing with the same background being behind all these characters. It's such a dull and uninteresting background, I can actually take it out and make it literally anything else. So that's what I'm gonna do for the rest of the video. Also, it's insane to me how Bankais came back this quick. The mechanic was only introduced like 6 episodes ago and boom! Now it's useless, but aha! Yhwach always knew this was going to happen, so he had a plan behind that one. Because he knew that they were gonna get their Bankais back through an unnecessarily long explanation sooner rather than later. Well then, why did he spend all the time and effort in creating a useless device in the first place? Fake stakes. This season is seriously not that bad. Aside from my main complaints and the story being noticeably weaker, it's a solid core of anime. All the new additions from the manga have ranged from pretty underwhelming, not gonna lie, to actually pretty interesting. This entire training session with Ichigo is completely new, and I wonder if something will come from this striking difference. I really like this sequence, especially that you can feel the distortion in Ichigo's body and as it's ripping him apart. And although the animation ain't nothing crazy, listen to Shinji's theme. Oh my. The sound design is also really good in any sequence with Shinji. From a design standpoint, Shinji has always been one of my favorite Bleach characters, but I felt like we never got enough time to really get a grasp of him or give him any valuable moments. So I'm excited. I can't wait to see more of it. Man, back to being a fraud, I guess. I've also always liked this dog guy. I found his narrative of insecurity towards himself really intriguing, so I was really excited to see his face again. Whoa. What the Oh, Jesus. Look, I'll be fair, it's not the worst CGI in the world, but recently anime has been serving some really impressive CGI, so to use this sluggish block as the focal point of an action scene will always look off. Oh, she's dead. Okay, I don't care. Guys, let me be honest for a second. I don't know what else to say about this season of Bleach. Everything that I loved is seemingly gone. The beautiful backgrounds are now replaced by a lifeless red screen. Oh, sorry, let me fix this real quick. Bankais are back, so we have now fully returned to the Bleach fight stereotype. Person A pulling out a move that has never been shown before to overpower person B. It's all so stale, and I don't know how it can get any better. This time, I don't want to make fun of Bleach or poke fun at its problems. This season isn't bad, it's just so painfully mediocre. And I thought that this arc was going to be what really made me fall in love with Bleach. I'll still watch all the upcoming episodes, but come on man. Jujutsu Kaisen just blew it out of the park with Gojo's backstory, and now they're getting ready to adapt the Shibuya incident arc. One of the most praised arcs in recent times, with the collaboration of some of the best animators in the industry. Naruto's coming back for a month with the beautiful 10th anniversary art style. Attack on Titan is coming, and Year 5 is right before our eyes. It begs the question, is there room for Bleach to be great? Let me explain what that means. There's a severe shortage of animators in the industry due to the horrible working conditions that studios have them go through. Many of the animators that carried the biggest influence in the Bleach anime are now gone working on other projects. Though I'm sure Bleach will have 1 or 2 really good looking episodes, I fear the rest of the show being this stale. I have genuine hope for Taguchi in whatever project he puts his name on, but no director is a one-man army. You need a crew to work around and really deliver a breathtaking experience. So now the challenge is... And there's no challenge.
Te he llamado para que tú vuelvas.
Tú no ves que estoy sufriendo, es muy dura esta prueba.
Hay un hombre moribundo aquí, dime que lo puede revivir.
Hay un hombre moribundo aquí, dime que lo puede revivir. Tú tienes la receta, la fórmula secreta para poner en ritmo mi corazón.
No existe medicina, doctores ni aspirinas para el dolor que siente mi corazón.